What's up, good people? Back to you again to talk about the historic concept of the Bill Saxo that was created by these service people, members of the BIPOC community that have disabilities, which is the first bill that we have been passed by BIPOC with disabilities. So let's get right into it. What was our reason for creating this bill? Oh, oh, no. We're smart. We went out, but it's not good. I have TV eyes. That is my excuse. So, Candace, yeah, first we gotta know who these people are. Candace, let us know who you are.
My name is Candace Coleman. I am the Racial Justice Organizer at Access. I have the privilege of organizing a called Advance Your Leadership Power, also known as AYLP. So we've been organizing for 12, 13 years now. Doing disability rights and racial justice rights movement work, and systems change. Of course, independent living called Access Living, which is culminating and brought us all together in this life. So I'm really excited to talk about the work around community emergency services and support.
Okay, now who do you think, TJ?
I am TJ Gordon. He is Roman. As I'm not only a part of AYLP and Access Living, but I'm also my day job and research associate at UIC or the University of Illinois Chicago. I am a artist / writer. I have to make things that I can remember.
Yeah. He got 50 minutes.
Yeah, TJ, he's the one that put together the digital resource hub, did a phenomenal job. TJ is that dude. But let's get right into it. Like, what was the inspiration for creating festival?
The inspiration for creating festival. So, Advance Your Leadership Power is a community organizing group. I want to make sure that people know it's not just me and TJ. We got a variety of writers team behind us. We got a bunch of folks who met bi-weekly to discuss issues that happen in the community. And we were really sick and tired of so we got and being successful and the medical professional suggested that we need a building room that they call number one. As they kept calling, the police presence kept moving bigger and bigger. And the father just got scared that, let's just stop calling all these because the presence is very, very violent. And so when he actually made that statement, most of the time and so that was the step on the life that we had over the launch. But there were more conversations and reports and all that. There was made us feel like they shouldn't pay a lot. They're pricing the analysis and support.
Yeah, and also around the same time as watch also keep hearing reports over and over again of not just people of color being killed by the police, but as we there stories more closely, most of them on the news. We're talking about what the news, there's countless of more numbers, I'm sure. But those who usually hear about it in the news, they also happen to have some form of disability as well. Even though there is a report called a Ruderman report that talks about how 1/3 or 1/2 of the reported police violence cases involve people with disabilities, they haven't dove deeply into race in which especially in the Chicago context, a lot of the police violence happened within the intersection of race and disability. You can even say gender as well.
I want to also add, our mental health system is very fragmented. The way we talk about mental health back then, mind you, I just want to know, we started having this conversation 9 years ago. And so we were in the crisis in the city where people didn't invest in mental health supports and services. And so that was funneling people into the jail system at a very rapid pace. It was funneling young people through the school to prison pipeline. And so a culmination of all of those issues, AYLP as a group decided that they just couldn't keep counting numbers that wasn't for our community but against it. And it was a fight for our lives. And so we decided to launch what is now.
Yeah, and I want to say, as I came in like until in the last 2 years, and I had the opportunity to testify for SESA because our situation, when I had bad silent seizure was the worst ever. It was right after my granny had passed. My granny was the only living grandparent that I grew up with, so I took it really hard. And I had a real bad episode, and I was fighting everybody. Then the police had came out of the hospital to get me to the bed, and the policeman held his hand real hard on my head, real hard. And then when he let it go, I bit the nerves because I have TBI, so any pressure can damage my brain even worse. And I think this is like very sad. Is like very important. It's so needed because like the policemen aren't trained to deal with mental health and behavior problems. And I know one thing in my role with doing SESA is because I'm seeing a lot of organizations, a lot of people trying to take credit for it. But I gotta let people know, remember who did it and put some respect on BIPOC people with disability names. Because it's so many times we get erased, and the fact that so many Black people become disabled from police violence or become disabled from being in the prison system. Like we have Khalif Browder. That young man was innocent and spent 2 years on Rikers Island and wound up committing suicide. So this is why I tell y'all my heroes for doing this SESA bill. Because how many years it took y'all to do this?
9. And to be honest, how many? I'm sorry, Curtis is our historian. Say that again.
6 years.
No, it was more than 6. Because remember we started the conversation in the school to prison pipeline. But I want to add, first of all, we're not heroes. The greatest thing about community organizing work is that we collectively are able to navigate each other's stories and figure out how we want to move forward. I want to say that I want to give kudos to AYLP because we were ahead of the curve in this conversation. So when you talk about putting respect on our names, when no one else was talking about how to shift the system, we were. And so in the city of Chicago, everyone wanted to reopen the clinics, which is not a bad thing. But unfortunately, the powers that be didn't put it into place what was needed that the community was asking for. And I remember one of the commitments that AYLP decided to do was we wanted to shift the conversation. And we wanted to create a continuum of care that not only shifted how people thought about mental health, especially in communities of color, but to actually put more resources towards other supports for mental and behavioral health.
That is not just clinics and institutions, but also resources within our community, and even things with mindfulness and yoga and things of that nature that combines what we know in our communities with the popular medical thought of the day. Because oftentimes when we always talk about reopening the clinics, it's always on the medical side of things. like Candace mentioned, it is great, but also, what about the other supports that we need? What about the outlets for people with living experience with mental health that could help them beyond just treatments?
Also, how do we, the term disability, the diversity of the disability community, the fact that you can have a physical disability or an invisible disability, it's not an institutionalized norm. And so a lot of these institutions that serve the public miss us because there isn't any, outside of medical like diagnosis, there isn't any socialization of disability. So for example, we talk about the ADA being a law, but it's not in our history books about psychiatry. Or we talk about how every 1 in 4th person is a person with a disability, but we can't have that general conversation. Or that one of the things that we battled a lot with at the table, I don't know if you all remember this, was how we wanted to formulate this public institution for us, because we knew that historically we were forced to be locked into psychiatric institutions, nursing homes, and various things. And so we had a constant battle with, do we want to take this route because it's another system that doesn't necessarily support us.
Yeah, and that brings me to another thing, because like in the resource Bible that me and TJ co-authored, and I put in there that Black people living in America have a very unique experience from any other ethnic group with disabilities. Because even after 1865, when our ancestors that was enslaved in Texas finally found out they was free, Black people with disability during that time couldn't leave the plantations. They had to stay on it, or they was placed in psych wards or placed in human zoos, freak shows. So like that's the number one reason why disability is a taboo topic in the Black community. And it's not commonly known that the descendants of these Black people with disabilities that were still enslaved even after 1865, their descendants were still enslaved all the way up to 1963. I found the one who wrote the book on it. Her name is Antoinette Harrell. And this is what I'm talking about. Like, this history isn't known. Yeah. Like when we talk about Juneteenth, okay, who freedom are we really talking about? Because we're not including Black people with disabilities. And the fact what the Black Panthers Party did really helped usher in the ADA law. And like all that history is like glossed over. So
to be honest, so I'm a racial justice organizer, so I have to look at the issues from the perspective of race and the perspective of disability. And when we talk about digging deep in history, there's a lot of historical figures who had disabilities that we don't even talk about it. Like Harriet Tubman had narcolepsy and she freed slaves. Like her story to me is like even more powerful because she had a disability. Yeah. And we don't talk about that. And so when we were collecting stats about instances where people with disabilities were harmed by police, we see the language and we understand the conversation around disability, but people don't blatantly say it out loud. And so we had to do our own investigation to say that person had a disability, but they would talk about that. Mm-hmm. And so you brought up police, but we don't talk about like the young lady who was murdered in front of her son.
Corinne Gaines.
Right, she had a disability. Like there are multiple people. Laquan McDonald, who was, unfortunately was shot 16 times, had a disability.
Eric Gardner. Asthma. And then the list goes on. Even Eric Floyd. George Floyd. I'm sorry.
Because of the career and illness, killed by police.
Yeah. Yes. It goes back to the narrative that we talk about police violence a lot, but again, whether it's some groups in the community or the general public in general, we always miss either disability or race, especially blackness, instead of realizing those two things go hand in hand. With addressing not only police violence, but also trying to fix the mental health system for not only black communities, but all communities too, especially the black communities.
And disability impacts us most. I believe one due to racism and due to poverty. So we get identified as having a disability a lot. And so that's why I think it's really important to talk about this social normalization of that. Because it's not just about you identifying yourself as the term disabled, but for me, it's like understanding your body in this very inaccessible environment we're in, and finding your balance of who you are and what you need in that moment, and what accommodations you need in order to accomplish those goals. And so when people think about it from that standpoint, instead of thinking about it from, this is my medical diagnosis, this is what I can and cannot do, then it opens up a different thought process around disability instead of thinking of all of the negative stigmas, the things you can't do, and the things you don't have access to.
Yeah, I kind of want to, like, before we go on, because you mentioned Harriet Tubman, because I believe throughout in my past life, I was like Harriet Tubman. And these are the, because when I was like a little girl, my mom used to tell me I used to wake up out of my sleep and like because of leg pain, but I was having nightmares like I was escaping. And then Harriet Tubman was 13 when she developed her traumatic brain injury. I was 13. And then, because a lot of time, as you mentioned, like we see Harriet Tubman as this hero, but do we think about her as a woman? Or did she have time to like really deal with what it's like having TBI? Because like when they said like her sleeping spell, that's kind of like the silent seizures that I have. And so I think in this lifetime, it's my goal to really understand how TBI impacts and help people, empower people, and freedom from imprisonment with a disability, the baggage that comes with it, and know how powerful and magical having a disability is. Because I tell you, people with disability are the most innovative, revolutionary people. Like I saw people, she painted this painting with her mouth. It was so dope and complex. But just getting back on SESA, like what are some of the challenges that's with SESA, and how can people support in this fight and helping it, making sure that it's properly enforced?
Well, go ahead.
Before you do it, I just want to say SESA, what it does, because I don't think a lot of people know.
Oh yeah, first explain what it is.
So the first thing I want to say is last year, we have been organizing and talking, I call it the tour of the legislators, as well as the tour of the communities. We have been doing that for many years before SESA did its first draft. And to be honest, when it did its first draft, it got blocked because the police department didn't like the story that we told that they murdered someone. First. The second part was that everybody wanted to figure out how the heck this is going to work, because SESA reinvents our historical 911 system. And people are like, well, why are you choosing 911? And it's because you are ingrained or taught that 911 is a place that you call if you need help. And so SESA does three things. One is it mandates that our 911 system creates a pathway for mental and behavioral health crisis. So that it's not a guessing game as to what you do with someone, and it's not forcing people to go into the policing system. And within that, as we were working on SESA, the state of Illinois got funded to create what's known as the 988 hotline, and that hotline is supposed to provide mental and behavioral health services. And it stems from suicide prevention, and it's been expanded. So SESA bridges the gap between 911 and 988. So if you call 911 once SESA is implemented, if you call 911, you get access to those services and supports that it's from you. versus everybody just be like, I'm calling 988. Who knows what the heck 988? Like, you're not ingrained to call 988.
Yeah.
Number two, along the journey of learning about the mental health community, because again, we're disability rights advocates.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, some mental health organizations like, what are you doing in our life? And I'm like, are you listening to the people who have been serviced by you a little bit more?
Yeah, like what are you doing for the people that you service? Like,
and so the second thing that it does is it removes the guessing game as far as services and supports are within a regional area, and it forces our emergency response system to have a conversation with each other. Historically, not only was it organized by Black disabled people, but historically, this is the first time that our emergency response system has had to have a conversation with each other.
yes.
And so it creates regional committees across the state so that the emergency response system, people with experience, and the services and supports that provide the services actually sit down and map a plan out for the area. The third thing that it does is, in your case, Fya, you described that you had a TBI, technical crisis, but people didn't understand that. And so it expands the definition, not just for mental health, because TBI is technically different. And so we want to count accurately who the 911 system serves when they're in crisis, and so it's not just people who have mental health conditions, those who are neurodivergent, those who have other conditions. So we want to make sure that we continue to build a legacy by being counted appropriately. And so that's the third thing that the SESA does.
I think there's a fourth thing also, if I may explain it, SESA, in a practical way. Let's say if I have a mental health crisis of any sort, no gun, no anything, just a mental health crisis. Historically, I'll have two options. Somebody call the police. Either I'll go to jail for cause of disturbance, and I'll be probably treated through the jail system, or go to the hospital. I don't want to do either one, but because we have this thing called involuntary commitment, where basically the powers to be could decide where you could go in those situations. You're basically trapped. Whereas with SESA, it opens up the possibility for the person in the situation to choose where they want to go. It could be to the hospital, it could be to the clinic, it could be to the local resource. And also the people who respond to these emergency calls will be trained in a similar way that EMTs for physical emergencies will react.
Yeah. And so your question was, what are the challenges?
Yeah, and one thing I want to bring up, like this is why it's so important for us to vote for Governor Pritzker, because he the one that's signing in, and it is this other white dude, girl, I don't know his name, but he's he's against SESA, and he's for abortion ban, which I kind of feel like, because I ain't got kids right now, but I don't want my life to be at risk, like if some complications happen. And I know, like, Mayor Lori Lightfoot has been a very opposer against SESA. So is there like a mayor candidate that we should endorse instead of Lori Lightfoot that supports SESA?
To be honest, I don't know who the candidates are, and even if we know the candidates, I personally can't endorse which person will support such or not, because honestly, we don't trust, in our work, we don't trust any of the politicians. Our job mainly is to whoever's elected, I don't care who, we put it in their heads. SESA will work, here's how it will work, and why SESA is needed. With that being said, I think you alluded to barely say that, and people who have his similar thinking is that, and even Lightfoot, is that we need the police. We need the police to be at mental health emergencies. But in fact, having the police there escalate the situation. That's why CESA is created in the first place, so that it gives other people more qualified to handle mental and behavioral emergencies, to be on the scene first, and have the police be there only when it's violent when it happens.
I want to add one of the challenges. There's a movement right now for what's known as co-responder monitoring. Co-responder is when the social worker and the police officer are together. CESA requires that you do not have a co-responder. That you only have mental health professionals who respond through mobile crisis unit team. One of the challenges is that a lot of entities think that it's best for police and social workers to go together. Some of the things surrounding that, one is that they inherently think that most people who have a mental health condition is violent. That's not true. Statistically, a person needs more health care than they have a violent episode.
And most of when it comes to like even crimes related to disability, we are usually, statistically, the victims, not the perpetrators.
One of the other challenges is, again, is infrastructure. What we're proposing doesn't exist yet. So a lot of people are like, well, why isn't it working now? Well, the infrastructure has to be built. Right? You can't build Rome in a day.
You gotta take time to build, especially, let's say, like you mentioned, Candace, the CESA calls for regions to create their own system. Think about, let's say, Southern Illinois, or even, Galena. They may not have as many mental health resources in general, especially for people like us, people of color, as the folks in the Chicagoland area or Springfield or any of the big college towns.
Okay, so this is like my last question before we open it up to the floor. So what exactly like you said, the system or the structure haven't been built for CESA, so what exactly is needed or what needs to be included in that structure or system for CESA to be successful?
A couple things. One, and we got a few people in the room who are on these committees. This legislation is housed out of the Department of Mental Health. In the law, we formulated one statewide committee and then 11 regional committees. We are looking for people to fill those positions on those regional committees. They include the heads of the hospital system and the 911 call center systems. Some of the police departments, because again, it's emergency response, so we want to make sure it's mandated accordingly. But not that they need to be on the scene, just the protocol has to plan it and map it out. And then people with lived experience, and we need those people with lived experience to really speak up about what it is they want even now. There is actually a committee meeting coming up right now. We're going to say the heart of CESA is a non-police response model, not co-responder model. That already exists. We're telling you to add a system that does not require police to be on the scene.
Yeah.
People don't feel safe.
Yeah. I can't stand police.
And then the last thing I want to say is to continue to advocate for the fact that having a mental health condition is not a crime.
Yes.
We can't criminalize people because of the condition that they have. That's why when we were drafting this language, we want parallel care that you would have for anyone who has a heart attack. You should have that same care for anyone who has a mental health condition. And so we got to keep advocating.
Keep advocating and also keep advocating for local support of mental health resources, whether it's our local clinics, our local wellness centers, are also promoting other outlets that could help us as a community and even as individuals navigate our mental health or our personal mental health.
And then speak up any chance you get. It's a lot of power players in this industry. From the 911 call centers to police departments to the mental health providers to local municipalities who can handle this type of service. Like there's a lot of rooms that we have to be in. And so if you believe in an idea like this, like call your local legislator or local alder people and say that this is something that you want.
Yeah, I'm waiting for us to stop talking anymore.
Yeah, okay, yeah, because that's what my brain, but anybody have any question, want to ask like our beautiful panel? Yes.
What does AOYP stand for? And CESA, I can't remember it. What is the acronym for?
Sure. AYLP is the name of the group who put the thought behind the legislation. And that's Advance Your Leadership Power. It's a racial justice advocacy group at Access Living. Many of the members are in this room now.
What's the name of the acronym?
Advance
It's
Your
leadership power.
AYLP.
Oh,
Yeah.
LP, okay.
Yeah, and you can also ask our historian of how it started, Curtis.
Curtis is dope, he's phenomenal and brilliant.
He'll tell you like a whole history, which is very deep, even though our name change has been recent.
Butterfly.
Sorry, but as far as the work we have been doing with the intersection of race and disability, we have been doing it for like almost 20 years. Almost 20 years.
We were formerly a youth organizing group, and this work, this CESA work, actually grew us up to say we want to stick together and do something about this particular system. And so the group members in the group said, I know I'm not young no more, but I still want to do this advocacy work. And so we graduated into a racial justice group. We were already doing racial justice issues because most of our group members were from the Black and brown communities. And so they was just like, I'm not leaving. Like, this is too important. And so I always say we grew up together. We're all adults, but we grew up together because I met a lot of these people when they were college students and high school students. And they were just like, I'm not leaving. So now we're seeing each other as parents, as working individuals, as people like pursuing career goals. And so it's a really beautiful space to be in.
Yep. And for CESA stands for everybody around here, is Community Emergency Supports and Services Act.
Switching services and support services.
There you got it.
Which again,
AKA Stephon Watts Act.
How is the stuff on?
More, the name sounds familiar, but can you share more about Stephon?
sure, 15-year-old in Cayman City, shot by police. He was a victim. They came into his home. Actually, a family called and said he was in a crisis and they needed help. It spurred him to help. When they showed up to the door, they had 6 or more police officers there. Family said, okay, we got it under control. You know, you could leave. Police said, we can't leave. We have to check the scene. Came in the house. Stephon was at the bottom of the stairs, presumably with a butter knife. The reason why he had the butter knife is he was really into computers. And he was trying to get into the closet with the butter knife. So he had it. But they felt, mind you, they're standing at the top of the staircase. They felt threatened by a 15-year-old with a butter knife and shot him in his home while his father was there. And so he was actually a cousin of one of the members of our group. But like, we kept hearing multiple stories like that from other people. about the fact that this system, the way that it's set up, just wasn't really helpful in these situations. And so we were tired of counting deaths in numbers and statistics of those who died from preventable deaths. Not to mention, some of us have mental health conditions, so we're starting to get fearful to even call for help. Some of us call each other because we knew that the system wasn't for us. And so this movement, this bill is historic in so many ways, and we have to fight to keep the intent of what it's for, because these system players are trying to change it. They're trying to right now. Curtis is on the statewide committee. He's like, this is not what I really wanted to do. And so we really, really need help getting the word out of what the original intent is for. And also getting the word out that this group did the work, because we really, really did the work.
And don't forget, CESA, the Pre-Trial Act, and other laws that changes and reforms law enforcement and also emergencies in general is not the purge. It is not the purge. We are not releasing people out into the streets to do whatever they want. Rather, we are saving people's lives by giving them the supports they need to alleviate stress and worries of paying for being in jail when you haven't done anything for the moment. In most cases, you haven't done anything, and focus more on other things. Similar with SUSA, focus more so on your health, your mental health, as opposed to if I would live or die.
I also want to add, this is not the solver. This is just a piece. We knew that. This was a spark. Say that we need to create other systems. We need to get community supports. We need to talk about disability in a way that, for lack of better words, we don't like normal. There's nothing normal about anybody. But have a holistic conversation around mental health support and what that looks like as a community. And so this law is just a piece of that puzzle. And we're very much so aware of that. And so I don't want to make any mistakes about that. And so I want to add, in addition to the things that I already recommended, that if there are other parts of this system that needs to be changed, created, or shifted, like create that pathway as well. And we could definitely talk about how we ready.
Okay.
You said we're trying to get government first to do, like have social exposure or
So the answer is yes. Governor Pritzker signed it into law.
okay.
We actually had a press conference last October with Pritzker. And so, yeah, it would be wise to have more visible presence. But I know, again, as a state and as an advocate of criminal justice reform, we're trying to also keep intact the Bail Bond Reform Act, which is what TJ mentioned. And when he said it's not the purge, it's because there's a lot of messaging going on that's saying we're trying to free all the criminals and they're going to run home and go in our communities and all. When really the law is literally about people who going into jail because they're homeless or they had a mental health crisis or, you know, some sort of need that didn't get met that put them in the criminal justice system. And because of money has kept them there for years. I think on record, they have someone who's been there 12 years, and that's before they even see a judge or get charged with something. And so I want to set the record straight that legislation is important as well. And these two historic legislations, the Bail Bond Reform Act and CESA, actually comes out around the same time in January of next year to be enforced. And make sure you tell people the truth about both legislation.
Yeah, because we don't need no more situation like Khalif Broward.
Once it goes into effect next year, we'll automatically be added to the police curriculum.
So that's
already part of it.
So that's a part of the planning process. What the statewide committee and the regional committees are doing is mapping out how the structure is supposed to be maintained, created, and implemented. Started, implemented, and maintained, I should say.
Okay. Well, that's a wrap, people. Yeah.
Drop the mic.
Mic drop. So we're turn on the music so I can twerk a little something.
So you guys straight take that.